Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This week we're gonna make a pencil skirt, but we're gonna make it out of a sweater material, so sweater fabric or jogging fabric, whatever you call it. It's a very easy project because with my health now I cannot do more difficult things, so it's very simple to do, very easy to make, also for beginners. And the fabric that I'm gonna use is this. It's a beige one. And this is the outside, it's that knitted jersey, but the inside is that really nice and soft fluffy material. I hope you can see it. I don't know if it really is focusing. I think now it is. So it's really nice and warm, and because it is stretchy, it's also very comfortable, and you can choose how tight or how loose you want to make your skirt depending on your preference. So I show you how we're gonna make it. So the design is very simple. It is just a plain pencil skirt going down. I make mine midi length, but you can also make it maxi or even shorter, whatever you prefer. We put a waistband on. I make the slit in my left side seam, and I make it until around my knee length going open. For the back we have a mid back seam with a zipper. I put my darts in my backs, but not in my fronts, because with this material, when you make darts, it gets a little bit bulky here, even when you cut off the excess of your dart. So I don't like that in my front. And because it is a stretchy material, you don't really need it. But when you make it out of normal fabric, maybe you would like to put some darts also in the front. But I'll just do 2 in the back. And that is the whole design. For the pattern, you will need your basic pattern for a skirt, and if you don't have that yet, I will leave down below in the description box and up here in the corner where you can find my basic pattern for a skirt. You make it yourself to your own sizing. You don't have to pay for something, you don't have to download, you just draw with me while you have your sizing measured. And you can use them over and over again, because I always start with the basic patterns of the things and we make the adjustments to the basic pattern. So what we did, we had our front part without the darts, and because I often make my skirts without a front dart, I already draw on my basic pattern where then I have to cut off my pattern. What you also can do is just fold in your dart when you place it onto your fabric, and then cut off your side seam. That is very easy to do also, but you can also just measure this and take that off from the side seam, then you have your pattern without the dart. So your basic pattern for the front, put on the fold of course, and measure out how long you want your skirt to be. Mine is not the length that I normally use, but you can just measure onto your fabric how long you want it to be, and then on the side mark where you want your slit to end. And what I always do when I have a slit on one side, I cut on a little bit more seam allowance, because then you have more fabric to work with while making your slit, and then you don't have to do difficult things. So that's for the front. Then for the back we make a mid-back side seam. We put a zipper in, so mark how long your zipper is for your mid-back. And then I only make 1 dart, that will be the bigger dart. And same for the front, you can measure how much that dart is and take it off from your side seam, or just fold that dart in, and then your pattern immediately goes to the middle, so your side seam will be a bit more to the middle. And same for the length, make sure you measure that right. So I cut my pieces out, the front on the fold and the back just 2 separate pieces. And what you can do, if you want your skirt to be rather tight fitted, you can cut it out without the seam allowance. I did just a little bit of seam allowance, not all that much that I normally do, but I like to have some. And what you can do, if you're afraid to cut nothing on, you can just cut your seam allowance, baste your side seams or put pins in, and then try it on. And when you try it on inside out, so with the outside to the outside, the pins to the outside, you can just pin it onto your body at the width that you really like, and that is what I mostly do. And I know when you have stretchy fabric you can give it a little less, but I normally never take off all my seam allowance because I like to have some room, because sometimes it's not as nice when your skirt is too tight, although it is a stretchy fabric. So you see mine is rather curvy because I have a curvy body, so I have quite some going out. I marked where my slit is in the left side seam. I marked my dart, of course, in the back, and I marked where my zipper will be later on. So we're going to start with sewing the side seams. So put your back parts on top of your front parts. This side is the side with the slit, so make sure your markings for the slits are nicely connected here. And then you pin all your side seam all the way to the bottom or to the top of your slit, and then the same for the other side seam. And what you also can do then, or before even, is sew in your darts. And if you don't know how to do darts properly, I have a tutorial on how to do that, and I will link it up here in the right hand corner and down in the description box. So now that we have sewn both our side seams, this is one of my side seams, you put the mid-back together. And what I did, I marked where my zipper ends. I put here this pin, and I'm gonna sew here a basting stitch till that mark, so it's very wide stitch. And below that I will do a normal stitch. I already finished the edges of my fabric. And I do that because then I can take this stitching here out very easily when I have sewn my zipper in. I have just a normal zipper, not an invisible zipper, so I will show you how to put that in. But that's the easiest way to do that. So make that stitching and then iron it open like I did here for my side seam, and then I'll show you how to put in the zipper. When you've sewn that mid-back seam, you take your zipper and you pin that on top of your seam, and you do that with the teeth of your zipper exactly here where your seam is. And I always use to put my pins like this. I have to put my last one there like that, and then you can flip. This is of course the wrong side. You can flip your skirt right side out. And then you can put your pins where you want to stitch, to make your stitching. And you do that of course with attaching here your zipper band. And you do that all the way around, and when you've done that you can take out these horizontal pins, because otherwise it's a bit difficult to sew, and you don't need them anymore. They are just here to secure your zipper here exactly on your seam, on your stitching. And when you've done that, you can take out here the basting stitch here at the beginning of your seam, and you can do that very easily by taking it out or whipping it off here at the end of your zipper. Often you can take the top part of your thread and take it out. If not, you can just very easily seam whip it, because these stitches are very wide apart, so it's very easy to open it up. And then you have nicely here your zipper opening. So I sewed my zipper in, and you saw that I used a different foot. It is a walking foot, and that works very well, especially with stretchy fabric, also with thinner fabric. Normally I use that all the time, but with making videos it's not that clear because it's rather big and it takes away a lot of the side. But I'm not really that happy with my new sewing machine, because it couldn't really nicely sew in my zipper, so that's why I used the walking foot. I never had that problem before with my other sewing machine, also the one before that, and that was a very cheap, very easy, very simple one. But this sewing machine somehow doesn't really go well with the stretchy fabrics, and I must say I have some more problems, so I'm not really happy with it. But luckily I have my walking foot, so if you have those problems too, you can also purchase a walking foot, because it's very nice, because it feeds in from the top and from the bottom, so your fabrics won't shift. And also with stretchy fabric sometimes it crumbles up, and then you have fabric left here on the bottom or on the other side that you're sewing in the second row. What you also can do is use some tissue paper on top of your fabric, and then your fabric won't stretch out, and then you also get a more nice result. But I don't like to have to rip off that tissue paper. You know that for me, when I use the painter's tape, it's the same. You have to rip it off later on, and that's a lot of effort for me. So I used for now my walking foot, but if you don't have that, please try using some tissue paper in between, so in between your fabric and your pressure foot. What I also couldn't do sorry, is here stitch the top part, because I haven't opened up my zipper, and because I didn't have a zipper foot I couldn't have the distance from here, so I had to go way out if I wanted to stitch it now. So I'll first open up now here my seam, and then sorry, stitch here the rest of my stitching for the zipper. So what you do is you just take a seam ripper. You can start from here, but I always like to just seam rip it all the way down, because it's not that many stitches, because it is basting stitch. I for sure have to put on my glasses. Now we're gonna work on our waistband, and because my fabric is rather thick, I didn't want to make my waistband of doubled up this same fabric. So what I did is I cut my waistband the length of my waist plus 3 centimeters for the overlap from the same fabric, and then once same measurements from a single jersey, so a t-shirt fabric that is a lot thinner, but I put some interfacing onto it to give it some structure, because I don't want my waistband to be really stretchy, but then the thickness of the waistband is a lot thinner than when I double off this fabric. It's a really huge bulk of fabric then in the waist, and I don't like it. So you can use thinner fabric just for the facing part of your waistband. Take as I said, your waist length or width plus 3 centimeters for the overlap. I made mine 3 centimeters wide plus seam allowance. and then you fold that double. And of course, when you make it from another fabric, you cut 2 pieces out of it and sew them together here on the top. Then what you do is you close up one end of your waistband, so folding it double and then sewing the ends closed. So just straight on, and then you sew it onto your skirt. And I want mine to be like this, so I put it right sides together on top of it, pin it all the way around till the end, and you have left here that will be the overlap, so it will be something like this. And you saw, maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't, I cut my facing part a little bit wider than my outer fabric, because then it's easier to do a stitch in the ditch. Then you have a little bit more fabric to fold in, and then you can more easily attach your inner fabric, so your facing part, when you stitch in the ditch here when you close it up. But I'll show you later on when we have attached our waistband to the top of our skirt. So what I did, I folded in the seam allowance of the facing, and what I normally do is first I put some pins straight across all the way around, that all the seam allowance is tucked in, and then I go to the outside and I put my pins here in the ditch, and that is where your waistband is attached to your skirt. I put my pins right in there, and then I check that I have my facing connected, because sometimes you are too low or too high and then your facing is not connected, the inside of your waistband, so always check that. So I pinned that all the way around in the ditch, and I already ironed this down, but still it goes a bit over the skirt. So when you sew it, you will see that I will tuck this open, because you really need to stitch here into that seam where it is attached. Then you won't see your stitching later on, because I don't really like that. I put some pins here on the top of my waistband to keep it nice and tight, and I'm sure that this is nicely aligned, the top and the bottom of the waistband. I hope I don't have to top stitch this, because I don't really like it, but if I have to, if it doesn't stay nicely put, then I will certainly top stitch this too. But now I'm going to make the stitch in the ditch here. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, I have whole specials about it. I will link it up here in the corner and down in the description box. I have a whole video about it. You can see there how to do this stitch in the ditch. I also did, I closed here the other end of my waistband, and so that I can also close this up here. You can do it by hand, you can stitch it through. I think I will do it by hand, because I don't like to see the stitching here. The only thing left to do is make here a buttonhole and a button, so that you can close up the waistband, and then hem here the slit sides. I will do it just by hand sewing the both slits and the hem on the bottom of the skirt. You can also do it just with your machine, but I don't really like top stitching on this kind of fabric, so I will do it hand sewing all around. I just had a cut in my thumb, so I hope I can hand sew, because I think the needle will just slit in the cut, so I have to see how I can do it. But that's the only thing you have to do. Just fold in your sides, your slit seams or your slit hems and the bottom of your skirt. And you saw that I have serged this already. You can also serge the bottom of your skirt or zigzag it, and then just do a single hem. You don't have to double fold it, because this won't fray anyway. But I would suggest, just to make it nice and clean, to just give it a zigzag or a serge on the bottom. And then your skirt is done. I'm going to sew my hand sew my whole hemline and also here the slit. And I am very bad at hand sewing, as you might know, so I'm not the one to teach you how to do that, but I just want to show you how I do it. So maybe you don't know at all how to do it, then you can do it like me, but maybe better watch YouTube tutorials of people that really know how to hand sew. I also have this, I don't know what it's called in English, we call it a vingerhoedje. It's literally translated a finger hat. Because I have the cut in my thumb, so otherwise I get the needle inside my thumb all the time. And I must say, with this fabric it is rather easy to make an invisible stitching, because the fabric is so thick. And what I always do is I take up a little piece of the bottom fabric, and with this fabric you must see if you have catched it or not, because of the fluff. You see, when I do this I don't have anything, so you take a very little piece here from the bottom. Make sure you have really the fabric, but just the few threads, and then I place it onto the upper fabric and I take the thread through, and then I go up a centimeter or so. Again, take another little piece of the bottom and put it through the hem. And that's a very quick and simple way to make an invisible hem with hand stitching. Just make sure that you don't pick up too much fabric from the bottom, because then you will see the thread from the right side. So you just feel whether you have something and not too much. And then what I did for the corners, this is the slit, this is the bottom hem. I cut off the point and I folded it in so that I have this here nicely attached in the corner, because when you fold it both in, then you get a very bulky corner here, and that's not nice. So I'll make it like this, then I make the stitching here going in the diagonal, and then you have a very nice stitching. So I go on hand stitching my hemline, and then my skirt is done. So it's a really nice and classic skirt. I like the slit. I could have made it even higher, but it's okay like this. I also always can open it up a little bit more, but I think this is a nice and classic height for a slit. I made mine around 2 inches on each, 2 centimeters, sorry, on either side smaller, because it could be a little bit tight. It's still not really that tight, but it was a little bit too loose to my taste, although I don't really like very tight clothing. But I think it's very versatile, it's very nice and warm because of the inside, and it's comfortable to wear in any occasion. So I think this is a nice garment to have in your closet to wear for any day. I also made such a skirt like this, but then in an A-line, but also of this kind of fabric. I made it before on my channel. I will leave it up here and down in the description box where you can find that video. So if you don't like the really going down skirts, the more pencil skirt, the more tighter skirt, you can watch that video and maybe make a more A-line skirt. So I hope you like this video. If you like it, please consider subscribing. Please hit the bell for notifications, and please give it a like, because that can bring my channel up in the algorithm of YouTube. So, and share if you know someone that would like this video. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.